Too many.
And I see there's a lot of faces from the last time. As you know, I'm absolutely passionate about the area of women in leadership, and I wanted to create a space, an intimate space, where we could have interesting speakers, an opportunity for discussion, question and answers, but that it was thought-provoking. And I didn't just want to do it from the leadership perspective, but I also wanted to do it from the well-being perspective. We are really pleased to have Emma Sinclair here today talking to us, and I will let her introduce herself in a minute. Thank you very much indeed. Emma, some of you may know, writes for The Telegraph and Wonder Women. She's also the CEO and founder of Target Parking. She has had numerous awards, Startup of the Year, etc. And she's going to be talking today about talent versus gender, question mark. And you know, that's fairly controversial at the moment, so I would invite you to challenge, question, etc. We've also got Fran, and those of you who attended the first one will know we didn't have this well-being piece in the last one, but this is sort of really in response to a lot of the feedback that came back, actually including a well-being aspect to these breakfasts. And Fran is going to be talking about adrenal stress and its impact and how you can mitigate some of those impacts. It's going to be, we're going to try and finish on time because I know you're all busy ladies and need to get back. We started later this time, last time was 7:30, so I'd like to get some feeling from you as to the timing, how it works for you at the end of this. We'll aim to finish by about 9:30 today. Please feel free to stand up, help yourself to breakfast. We will have some latecomers coming in, and I think without further ado, we'll kick off. So, Emma.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me. Very kind of you to invite me. I broke down a few of the topics that I thought I'd speak about this morning, and when we thought about what might be thought-provoking, I suggested talent, not gender, because it's something I feel quite strongly about, which sometimes in a room of women sounds like a dangerous way to start a conversation. It doesn't mean I'm not hugely in favour of supporting women in business. And in fact, I am, it occurred to me on the way in this morning, the epitome of the stereotype of women, because I am head to toe in pink. Anyway, I thought what I'd do is I'd tell you a little bit about a journey, how I got to where I am now, and then perhaps place a few thoughts with you about what you might discuss over breakfast off the back of actually a well-timed piece I've written in the Telegraph this morning. So, Target Parking, a little bit about writing, a little bit about what we're talking about this morning. Target is my second car park business. I was just saying to a few of the ladies this morning who said to me parking with a frown, which is usually what happens when someone sees Target Parking. When people say to me sometimes, what did you plan on being when you were younger? I mean, I obviously didn't know when I was reading the share prices at the time that I'd have any inclination towards the stock market. What I always wanted to be until I was about 7 was a rock star ballerina mermaid. That was kind of quickly what was on my agenda. So my day job involves running Target. We are 4 years old. We've been the fastest growing company in the sector for the last 4 years. I do, as you mentioned, write for the Telegraph. I'm fortunate to do Sky News, which involves even earlier mornings than I had in order to get here. So all of these things make my life infinitely more interesting than I had anticipated. Because as I said, I started off thinking rockstar ballerina mermaid. That wasn't obviously going to be what happened, but one of the things about life and gatherings is that you meet interesting people who stimulate your soul as much as your mind, and that is very important in business. So a couple of things about what we're all talking about this morning. Fran is going to be talking afterwards about adrenal stress, which I wasn't aware of before I came. Hugely important. One of the reasons that I took the Telegraph column is because public health, wellness, inflammation, autoimmunity, these are things that are absolutely at my core. If you are not well, you can't do your job. And if we think we're well, most of us are not, because we lead very busy lives, we lead city lives. We very, very rarely have time to unwind. And if you were to do a survey of 6 or 7 months of my column, you would see that my business column for a broadsheet has words like naturopathy, aromatherapy, probiotics, things you just don't usually hear in business columns because it's extremely important to me. One of the things that I wrote about this morning, which I think might be a timely start with the conversation, is Kate Swan was appointed CEO of a company called SSP this week. And I started seeing a theme and a thread, especially by people that commentate on diversity. They all said, what a shame, Kate Swan is leaving WH Smith's. I'm thinking, what a shame. Yeah, she's fantastic at her job. I imagine we'll all miss her. What they were actually saying was, gender diversity statistics were about to take a dip because Kate was leaving. So, FTSE 100 has about 20% of the executive boards that are female. FTSE 250 is about 13%. And Mervyn Davies in 2011 said that we should aim for 25%. So that's the government target and one that people generally use as a benchmark. With Kate leaving WH Smith, the FTSE 250 statistic is going to dip. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket science to point that out. So first of all, I thought the whole article about that was magnificent. The second thing I thought was, at what point did we become so obsessed with metrics that practicality was not at the forefront of our minds? Now, it's very important to measure everything. I understand that, otherwise we don't have a benchmark for progress. But measuring gender statistics, I think, arguably, might have got slightly out of hand, because when I start seeing that people are regretful that a woman is taking another position in a private equity group of a substantial business because the statistics are going to take a dip, or something I found frustrating and arguably absurd. So one of the things I wanted to think about this morning, one of the things I threw out there, is that I very much believe it's talent, not gender. I very much believe it's not just about diversity, it's about inclusiveness. So when we talk about quotas, when we talk about anything to do with women, I think one of the things to bear in mind and to provide some context is, in the United States, there are less African Americans on board than there are women. So quotas, I just think, is something not digestible in the Northern Hemisphere, because then there are tons of groups, they're going to start raising their hands and saying, oh, what about us, what about us, what about us? So what I wanted everyone to think about this morning is that obviously pulling women up the pipeline, keeping an eye on diversity is hugely important, and I recognise also that sadly sometimes performance doesn't speak for itself. So if we do a good job, it doesn't always speak for itself. But should we be spending so much time talking and thinking about gender? So please don't bite my head off. I'm absolutely not saying that it's not extremely important to promote women in the workplace. And one of the reasons I floated my company is I wanted to be on a PLC board, so I floated my own. But so my point is, sometimes practicality needs to play. So it's great to talk about all of these things, but what are we all doing about it? And what should we do about it to ensure the next generation gets an easy ride? Because in my heart and in my mind, I think that the next generation will enter a workforce where diversity has been part of the agenda at a very senior level it has been now for about 2 years. So talent, not gender, something to think about.
I just, in your tables, just spending a few minutes sort of formulating a number of questions that we can put to Emma.
I'll do that louder, otherwise. Let's start with you because you're talking, you're the naughty table. I point to you the naughty table because you were still talking.
Oh, sorry. We're having a lively discussion. I think really the kind of conclusion we came to was how important it actually is to educate our children and other children and have positive role models for them. I mean, the situation is as it is, and the real way we influence it is that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a great Twitter feed I occasionally follow, which is a lady who retweets things that she finds in shops that are just so gender stereotypical that it is a joke. And there was a T-shirt in a shop the other day I saw, and it was from a boy, it said something like, I'm going to be a policeman. And the one next to it says I'm a little cupcake. So ultimately, as I said, the ultimate gender stereotype this morning, head to toe and pink. But absolutely, it's about accessibility. The thing for me is, my father went to work every day and he took me into work, so going into work was normal, and I've never contemplated for a moment that there's anything that I can't do for reasons of gender, or for reasons of anything actually. And my father and my parents are the people that instilled that in me. And I understand the challenge. People don't have parents that work in business or don't necessarily have access to some of the things that perhaps we all have access to. But I know that my father is the reason I've got to where I am. He's given me a push in all the right directions and given me the confidence. And so that confidence is absolutely critical.
So just to give you a little bit of background about the adrenals and adrenal stress, the adrenal glands sit above the kidneys and are tiny, about the size of peanuts. You've got the central nervous system, which splits into two pathways. You have the sympathetic, which deals with mobilizing energy and preparing for action, and then the parasympathetic, which deals with relaxation, rest, digestion, reproduction, growth, and cell repair. And these systems are meant to work interchangeably and synergistically. Going back to history thousands of years ago, our early human ancestors, the stress response kicked in, or also known as the fight or flight state, when you came face to face with a lion or a bear or fighting a tribe. So you'd have what's called the stress response. This will prepare you to survive. And this is when the sympathetic system kicks into action. Your heart rate increases, your blood pressure increases, the adrenaline is pumped into the bloodstream. You have a stress hormone, cortisol, which is pumped into the bloodstream as well, and also sugar is dumped so that your muscles can utilize it and be ready for action. Often a typical day for the city worker is they get up early, they have to take their children to school, and they're rushing, they're travelling in rush hour or sitting in traffic, so all of these things are creating a stress response. They're working long hours, trying to meet deadlines and going to meetings, taking phone calls. They want to feel fit and look good, so they're trying to cram in a workout. And I always say to my clients that less is more. Especially I see with women putting huge pressure on themselves and thinking that they have to do lots of training and long hours of exercising. So what happens is when the stress response is always permanently on, this impacts relaxation and digestion and cell repair and growth and healing. So the immune system may find that you're getting a lot of colds or constantly getting ill, and if this burnout carries on for a few years, you suddenly may hit adrenal exhaustion where you literally can't get out of bed, or it manifests into a more serious illness. What I want to share with you is to make people aware that exercise can also be a stress that may contribute to adrenal fatigue and exhaustion if done inappropriately. So a lot of excessive cardio, such as excessive running, spinning classes and long sessions can be detrimental to somebody already suffering adrenal stress.
So you mentioned symptoms there. They seem like symptoms that would be similar to other things as well. How do you know when it's that versus something else?
It's a very good question. I would say that if you are, if you're suffering a chronic illness, the underlying symptoms may lead to that chronic illness. But if you hit some of those symptoms and your lifestyle is you're on the go a lot of the time, I would say that a high proportion of people are suffering a bit of adrenal stress. The issue is whether you can come back out of that. So there are days where you may have that, you're on the go constantly and you feel tired and wired, but are you able to bring yourself out of that through rest and recuperation? So the next day you have that recovery time and you feel back to normal, or are you constantly like that? Now you can get a more specific way to get tested is you can have saliva tests as well, which will specifically tell you your adrenal levels through the day. But I would say the majority of people I've seen, the lifestyles that are living, just by hearing their lifestyles, that a lot of people have some form of adrenal stress because they have problems switching off, sleeping, losing weight, things no matter how hard they try.
I